Well, she's quickly become one of my favorite people. You are not going to want to miss this conversation with Amy Dresner, author of the amazing new memoir called My Fair Junkie. You are going to not be able to put this book down, and I can't wait for you to go a little deeper with Amy and her story as we share in this conversation. So buckle up. Here we go.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people. People who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
Amy Dresner, this is going to be one wild ride. I have been excited all week to get the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's awesome.
Really excited to be here.
Fabulous. So we were already chatting before we hit the record button, as I often tend to do. And then I'm like, we got to get started here because, everything that's coming out of your mouth just makes me smile. And I'm just so impressed. Your book, My Fair Junkie, is literally, I am a junkie for this book because that sounds super cheesy, but I read it in literally like 2 nights that I could not put it down. It was amazing. My Fair Junkie, a memoir of getting dirty and staying clean. And I want to get started talking about the book and about the book writing process and about who you wrote the book for. I loved your dedication, which was, it's for anybody who thinks it's too late. And I thought that was really beautiful. So let's get started. Tell me all about why you decided to write this book. What compelled you? Obviously, you had a great story, but what really, it's a tough thing to put a book out in the world. Why did you decide to go and be so vulnerable and share it?
Okay, so I had been writing for The Fix since 2012, and I was getting letters from readers, and they're like, "You got to write a book. You got to write a book." So, obviously it was the next step as a writer to write a book, but I'd been frightened, you know what I mean? Because it's seemed like so like a marathon, we're good at sprints. Like we're good in the first beginning of stuff, but we're not good at the long haul. When stuff gets really hard and tired or boring, it's like, ugh. And I'd started a lot of books before, and I'd been chronicling this stuff and I just never finished. And so I thought, God, can I write a book? And I also had been a chronic relapser. So where's a book where it's like, oh, she gets sober. She gets, she relapses. She gets sober again. Oh, she relapses again. She gets sober. You know what I mean? It was just like, there was no sort of, editors love narrative arc. That's their big obsession. And it's like, I guess I never felt like I had landed and had a shift that was worthy of talking about. Like the other thing was just sort of like a chronicle of my fuck ups. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I've been in 6 rehabs and 4 psych wards, and here's me, in and out of program for 20 years. Check it out. And I picked up every drug and abused it. Yay! You know what I mean? And finally, there was sort of I hit something. I had a shift. My life changed. I changed, and I felt like I was on different ground, and I felt like I had a story. And the other thing was when I was doing the community labor
which we'll get to at some point in your story. That is
my domestic violence charge, which is not anything that I ever had on my bucket list. You know what I mean? I was growing up in Beverly Hills. I was like, I'd like to be arrested for felony domestic violence someday. That'd be awesome. That'll look terrific on a Match.com profile. Like, men will be into that. It was like, I was chronicling that on Facebook. Like every day, I'm like, another day on the chain gang, and I would talk about what I learned and take pictures of stuff I saw on the street, and I really owned it. And people were loving living through it. And they were bummed when I finished. They were like, get arrested again. And I was like, no, I'm good, And so the fact that people loved it so much, and it was also my way to deal with the shame of it, because there were a lot of people on the chain gang who were like, hey, I'll be your Facebook friend, and don't you dare tag me on anything related to this. They're like, I am pretending I'm on a work trip or vacation, like no one knows. They were really like hiding it. And I was just kind of like, hey guys, I'm a criminal now. Look where my addiction took me. Yay! You know, and so that gave me the idea for the framework for the book. That I thought would be interesting. I think linear addiction memoirs are obviously boring because, you know, well, obviously people know, like, if I'm still alive, that I'm probably sober, but not necessarily. I mean, Kat Marnell is alive and she's not sober. I mean, they're, you know, but it's like linear memoirs, you know where it's going.
Right.
So I thought that would be boring. And I didn't know how to cover 20 years of relapses without it just being like, you know, a 600-page just book where people were going to like garrot themselves. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, like, oh, this is so dark. So I used the framework of the chain gang and stuff I saw in the chain gang to like, as a literary technique to use to flip me into a flashback so I could cover different points in my life, in my 20s and 30s and whatever. So, my friend Amber Tozer, who wrote Sober Stick Figure, had just gotten a book deal, and I knew her from Sobriety, and I knew her from comedy, and I just was like, hey, would you pass on some of my fix articles to your agent? Like, you know, and she was like, yeah, sure. And so I sent it, and my agent was like, oh, I love your writing. And I was like, cool. So then we had a phone call, and I was like, here's my idea for the book. He's like, I love it, write it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I wrote like, he's like, write the first 3 chapters. So I wrote like 80 pages, and he was like, whoa, slow it down. He was like, slow it down by like half and like bring characters back and make it more novelistic. You know, I've been used to writing editorial, which is like 1,800 words and like, ding, you wrap it up in a bow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I fleshed it out and I sent it to him, and he was like, okay, great. So now that we had like 130 pages, and then he was like, okay, now write your book proposal. And which is like, you know, that's like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's like, why did you write the book? What's your platform? You know, compare it to 5 books that are similar and why yours is different and better. And like, why is it going to sell? And why now? And like, who are you? And, you know, testimonials. And he was like, and a full outline of the book, which I'd never done before. So once I'd outlined the entire book, you know, of course your book takes on a life of its own and it doesn't necessarily follow the outline, and publishers know that. But I actually had like a roadmap, wherein before when I tried to write a book, I'd just start writing and I was like, wherever this goes. And then I would just like run out of steam.
That kind of makes me think of it in terms of almost like a metaphor for life. And you talked about it later in your book. I will not spoil any of your book for anyone who hasn't read it yet. I promise. Anyone watching, don't worry, no spoiler alert.
Teasers, just give a little teaser so people want it.
But when you were saying that, it made me think of, you know, when you talked about how we need structure in our lives. And as addicts, so often we live without structure and we sort of wait for structure to find us. And we forget that it's discipline that precedes structure. We need to, we need to discipline ourselves.
We hate it. We hate structure. And we like, you know what I mean? But like we fall apart without it. And that's like, you know, that's, sorry, I'm sitting next to the heater, even though it's California. Hi. Right. It's like, get some fat on your bones, Amy. Right. And I'm in a sweater and it's like 80 degrees out. And I'm like, I'm cold. My dad said something, and it's in the book. And I mean, it's, you know, something that really resounded with a lot of people, which was, my dad said to me, discipline creates stability. Stability does not create discipline. And he told me that in my like 20s or 30s. And I was like, whatever. But like, that now I get it. I was waiting to feel sort of solid and okay inside before I took the steps to build my life and like go to the gym and like have a job and do it, you know. And it's like wrong way around. You create this disciplined, structured environment for yourself, and that creates stability within you.
Yeah, well said. Now, your dad, speaking of your dad, was he was a novelist and a screenwriter. Did he give you any tips or any suggestions when you were writing your book? Did you consult with him before writing it?
No, And he hasn't read the whole thing. He hasn't, there's a lot. He lived through enough of the drug stuff. And so he wasn't like, I'd love to read about that overdose again. You know what I mean? Like, and certainly not the sex stuff. He no father wants to read about that.
Even though he wrote softcore porn.
I know. But what the comment that he made at my book reading, he goes, I made it up. Yours is real. And I was like, good point. Good point. Like, you chronicled your real stuff. Mine was just made up, but mine was fiction. I was like, all right, point taken. So no, I didn't really, I was really kind of leaning on my agent. And he was willing to help, but like, oh God, and I also I lent on other writer friends too who had written books, and I was like, wow, like I feel this way, and is this normal? And like, and they were like, yes, and yes. And I mean, I had 6 months to finish.
Wow, that is a fast turnaround. Yeah. So what was your process?
Once we sold it, they were like, okay, like your manuscript's due in 6 months. And I was like, oh my God. So, and the last thing you want to do as an ex-drug addict who's getting money from a company is be late. You're like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, I gotta be on time.
And were you?
Yes, I was. It was a day early. Yeah.
I love that. Overpromise and under.
No writers are on time with their manuscripts ever. Like addicts or not. But I was like, I wanted to prove to them that I was like reliable and da da da. I was also lucky that I got to use some pieces from my Fix articles. The Fix gave me permission, so I got to use little chunks from here and there. And like I said, I've been chronicling some of this stuff, the depression and the drug use, for years. So I didn't have to recreate the dialogue.
Yeah,
I had it written down because I've been trying to write a book for 20 years. You know what I mean? So it's like, the stuff with like the British psychiatrist, like, that's exactly what he said. I wrote it down. I couldn't have, like, I'm not terrible at creating dialogue, but like, that is all real. So,
well, speaking of real, it is one of the most real, raw accounts I've ever read. I'm a huge memoir junkie. I love reading memoirs. I think for me, it's the most entertaining and enjoyable reading that I do, especially because as a fellow addict, for me, it's just a great way for me to get into other people's heads and mindsets and see what made them tick and what was going on in their lives while they were actively in their addiction. And so your book is absolutely incredible. Where can everybody find it? I'm assuming anywhere where books are sold.
Yeah, it's at Barnes & Noble. Amazon.com is kind of the easiest place to get it. It's the cheapest place to get it right now too,
Awesome.
And I also did an Audible book, and I narrated it. And people say it's hilarious. I've never listened to it, but
you've never listened to it because you have a voice that.
Oh my God, why? To hear myself. Oh, I would spend 5 days in a glass booth by myself, freezing my ass off, narrating my own book, and then had to go back for pickups. It's like, it was like a lethal injection chamber. You know what I mean? You can't even wear a jacket because anything that makes noise, and you're like in this uncomfortable chair. And if you flub a word, you've got to go back. I mean, and in doing readings, like, I'm tired of my story in my book. Like, I don't need to listen to my book.
But I bet you nailed that pretty well too, doing that work. Because I know
that's because the book is written in my voice. So it was really easy. And being a former stand-up, I had that sort of ability. And I'm actually just like a good cold reader. I don't know how good my impressions are, but, it's like, but I was like, do I sound like a man? Do I sound, people are like, there's like a joke of that in the book. And like, people think I'm a man on the phone sometimes. They're like,
I can imagine you've got a deep voice for a woman, but it's so
like,
unique.
And I was like, oh my God, like, I love trans people. And like, but it's like, no. I mean, the joke is that I've always had a low voice, and that my mom, even when I was a baby, like when they were bringing all the babies down to be nursed, she could always tell when it was me, because all the other babies were like, wah, wah, and I was like, wah, wah. So I've always had a really deep voice. It's not from like years of like smoking. It's like, it's always been low.
It's amazing. Well, you've got one of those voices that we love to hear, and I want to hear more of it. So speaking of your mother, can we go back into your childhood and kind of give us a little bit of a sense of how you were raised and where, and a few of the sort of moments that really impacted you, and then go all the way up into wherever you want to take your story. But I just know that people want to hear your story. I know they're going to read the book, but I want you to kind of walk us through your story.
Okay. I grew up in Los Angeles. My parents split when I was 2 years old. I have a lot of addiction and mental illness in my family on both sides. So basically I split my time between my father in sort of Beverly Hills and my mother in Laurel Canyon. And my mom was a workaholic. I was mostly, I had nannies. I mean, we had money, but it's not like LA big money. But my mom moved to Mexico when I was 13, and because she was basically in a profession. She was in fashion design, and it's a very ageist profession. And she felt like she was going to have a nervous breakdown, and she was like, I gotta go create a new life for myself. So she moved to Oaxaca and started a textile design company down there and built it from scratch and all that kind of stuff. But I think I felt abandoned for sure. And I was, went through puberty being raised by my dad. So it's like, it's a completely different experience being raised by a man, which is why I'm sort of manly now. It's like, I'm weirdly macho. It's like, I didn't know how to put on makeup or, cook or, what like a good fitting bra was like, but I can play poker and I can, tell jokes, and I know how to fix a mean drink, and like, I can play basketball. So, it's like, but yeah, I definitely felt, just even when I was young, I felt weird. There was nothing wrong with me, but I had that thing that we all feel, which is like, I feel different than other people. And you can see it in pictures, like 5th grade, everyone's smiling and I'm not smiling. Like I'm already weirdly self-conscious in my skin, and I'm already like, you know what I mean? And everyone else is like, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, and I'm like, wow, look how uptight and like uncomfortable I am. And I always felt like I was looking at everything from the outside. So my father, basically, I ended up going to an all-girls private uniform school in Bel Air with like really like stars of kids, rich kids, like really rich kids who were like doing blow off the, dashboards of their brand new BMWs and stuff like that. And my dad was scared I was going to get into drugs. And so he was like, okay, I'm going to make you a bet. I'm going to bet that you're going to smoke or drink or do drugs before you're 18. And if you don't, I'll give you $1,000. And that's how Jews raise each other. We just sort of bribe each other. And it worked. So, I waited till I was 9. And I was actually afraid of drugs. I think deep down I knew I was going to have a problem. I thought they were a cop-out. I was afraid of them. I stayed away from them. I was very into purity. And I think that's very classic addict. Like, we're such extremists. So I went from like being like this weird sort of like purist virgin to, you know what I mean? And then fast forward, I'm like an IV drug addict, sex addict. It's like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And
that's really funny. I've never ever thought about this in my own life, but I would lie to my parents and tell them that I had never kissed a boy or dated a boy. Meanwhile, I already had sex, and I'm telling them, oh my God, no way. I'm totally a virgin. I had never thought about it, that I sort of wanted to maintain that purity. And I don't even really know why. It was, for me, I thought it was just because I couldn't connect with my parents and really thought they'd judge me and be upset with me. And I never had a relationship where I felt like I could talk about those things. But maybe there was also a piece of that, wanting to have that purity too. I don't know. It's interesting though.
I think also because my father was, and my mother at that point too, he was my sole parent. I didn't want to become a woman. I didn't want to become I didn't want to grow up. I didn't want him to see my sexuality because I was afraid he would push me away.
I remember when you got your period and you wrote him that note.
I cried. I was like, I'm not a grown up. Like I was, he was like my mom. So I just, I was very, very worried that if I became a sexual being, so I became sort of asexual. And so, and then I show up at college and I'm like, I've never drank and I've never done drugs. And I've never, had sex. And people are like, what a weirdo. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I thought it was something kind of cool to be proud of. I was like, I'm waiting for the right person. It was like, and I realized very quickly that sort of this thing that I valued was like a terrible social albatross around my neck. And I was like, ooh, got to get rid of this. So I drank and I lost my virginity, which was a horrible experience and is in the book. And
I think for a lot of us, it was a horrible experience.
Right.
In all different ways, but it was horrible for me too. I think for so many women, it was never that dream that we all imagine. I mean, for the girls that it was, I mean, I can't lie that I'm a little envious thinking that was their experience, but for most women that I talk to, it's not fairy tales.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, that's sex? No, thank you. You know what I mean? I just kind of like sort of put it on the shelf again for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I was drinking, I blacked out, but I'm throwing up. It's college though, and it looks like everyone else is drinking. It doesn't look that different, except I'm starting to have a nervous breakdown. So I had my first nervous breakdown at 19. I've always suffered from depression. Like I said, there's an enormous amount of mental illness in my family. There's, people have had electroshock therapy, people have been institutionalized, people have killed themselves. Like it's all like rife in my family tree.
When you say that you've always had depression, how old were you when you first knew that it was depression as a kid?
I would say 15 is when I started to really feel like really depressed. And like I would have days where I wouldn't get out of bed and I was like, I'm too ugly to be on the planet, and like that kind of like self-loathing and like, I'm ashamed to be alive, like weird, dark thinking. And, my first thing before alcohol was an eating disorder, which was a way to control feelings, a way to control the environment that felt out of control. And, also a way to, I don't know, I didn't like myself, but to me now looking back, I think that it was part of my alcoholism. It was the beginning of my alcoholism. And it's like, as I said in the book, it's like, I realized there was a formula. I was like, oh, I can put something in my body and change my feelings. And it doesn't matter if it's a Xanax or a donut or a dick, like it changes my feelings. You know what I mean? And that's what I was about, because I had big, big feelings. And I was like, how do I turn the volume down?
Yeah.
So, I was anorexic and bulimic from 19 to 25. And then I found crystal meth and bang, I was like, oh, well, this works better than an eating disorder. Like, hello, you can eat what you want. You're skinny and it's a much better high than just, Ben and Jerry's, pint of Ben and Jerry's or whatever, you don't have to throw up. This is awesome. So crystal meth was the drug that for me clicked and something opened up inside. And I was like, this makes me feel normal. I was like, this is what Prozac should feel like. Why aren't the psychiatrists giving this to me? I feel normal for the first time in my life, and I want to be on this for the rest of my life, and I don't know why everyone's not on it, and I need this to be on the planet. I really felt that way. I really, really felt that way. And it wasn't until later that I found out my mom had been like addicted to amphetamines when she was a model for 15 years, and that my uncle was a speed freak, and it was very much in my family. And I think depressive people tend to go towards the uppers, and anxious people tend to go towards the downers. You know, there's definitely a self-medication aspect to it all. So I was never really into downers. I was into coke and meth, and booze made me really out of control. Like I'd black out and get naked and violent. Like it was gnarly. I had no idea what I would do. And it was really, really scary. So I liked drugs because I could maintain more control. At least I was sort of coherent still. You know what I mean? So
so you're at college, you're drinking, you're not really having sex, kind of, but not really. You're doing meth. So when did meth start?
I started doing meth until I was like 25. I moved to San Francisco.
Okay.
And, after my second nervous breakdown at 23, that's like my hobby. Nervous breakdowns are my hobby. That's really one of my hobbies. And I should teach a course on how to have a nervous breakdown. I moved to San Francisco and I got into the crystal meth, and I started doing spoken word, and I started hanging out with junkies and tweakers and that whole scene. And I was like, you know, pretending to be this badass when I was like this like trust fund Beverly Hills girl. And I was like, I'm a badass and a tweaker and I'm gonna run drugs. And it was like, you know, I'm like, I'm in a Quentin Tarantino movie. It was just such bullshit, you know. I was so out of my league, so out of my league. But my drug addiction was like instant and like a rocket. And my parents, I got a huge infection in my face from snorting like dirty street meth. My parents moved me back to Los Angeles, and they were like, well, she'll be clean in LA. She never did drugs in LA. So, you know, within, you know, a couple months, I'd found a dealer, and I navigated the entire speed scene in LA. And that was like the next year and a half of like staying up for 17 days, writing a new Bible, and like, you know, plucking your eyebrows, and, you know, like just refinishing furniture and collaging, like the weird shit that tweakers do.
Oh my God. And I don't have any experience here with this. So it's
so
fascinating. Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Crystal is very, very, very addictive, because not only because of the energy it gives you and how you feel creative, but it gives you this false sense that you're plugged into sort of the synchronicity of the universe. And like everything's a sign and lining up and that kind of stuff. And it's like, I never had a psychotic break, which is incredible, considering the amount of schizophrenia in my family. But I walked into a market and I woke up in an ambulance and I'd had a seizure. And so I decided to go into treatment. And that was my first of 6 treatment centers.
Now let's make people aware. You have epilepsy as well. So
I have epilepsy now, thanks to crystal meth. I never had epilepsy before. So I had that one seizure, and then I got clean, and I was living in Paris, and I was about 5 years clean, and I started having grand mal seizures out of the blue. And the French neurologist did a bunch of tests, and he found hyperactive lesions on my frontal lobe. And he was like, did you do a lot of cocaine? And I was like, I did a lot of meth. He's like, because there's no epilepsy in my family. I had never had a traumatic brain injury. There was no reason. No one develops epilepsy in their 30s out of the blue like that. So it was really gnarly. And so, I mean, I have all my teeth. Yay. I mean, it's LA. That's all that matters, right?
Practically, but it is shocking that you did.
I know, every dentist is shocked. Every dentist is like, I'm sorry, you've never had a cavity and you were a crystal meth addict? It's like, yeah, but I have epilepsy. The damage is inside. Damage is inside. You know, I should look like an Apple doll. I should not look this good for my age, having done so many drugs. But, and then it just became a process of getting time and relapsing, and getting time and relapsing, and, you know, treatment centers, and, you know, trying alternative treatments, and weird, you know, and exorcisms, and, you know, weird holistic, you know, they shoot you full of amino acids. And I mean, my parents tried everything. They were like, oh my, because I wouldn't go to program. I wouldn't go to a 12-step program. I was really, really, really against it. I didn't like it. It freaked me out. I thought it was a Christian cult. I was like, I'm a Jew. No, you know, I had all these preconceived notions about it. And of course now I'm completely in a 12-step program, but, and it got darker and darker. And, you know, I started shooting cocaine, and then, you know, got clean again, got married, then got hooked on Oxy. I mean, whatever there is, I'll abuse it. Even if I don't like it. Like I was like, I can smoke pot because I hate pot. And then I'm smoking pot every day, you know, and hating it, you know, and hating it. But I'm like, at least I feel different. Like that's so us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
whatever
like,
you can do to get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. Like, yeah. Now I'm into napping. That's my new thing. I'm a napaholic.
I remember you sharing that on the Share podcast, that you want to start Napaholics Anonymous, and I remember saying that he wants to help you start that thing. I think honestly, because sleep is so therapeutic, and it's it can be a form of escapism, but it can also be such a great form of self-care. It really can.
Yeah, and I think that also it's like sort of sometimes you just need to unplug your computer and restart it. And sometimes a nap will do that. Like a nap, you know, you wake up and, you know, you're like, oh, You feel different. You know what I mean? If you're caught up in a whirlwind of like crazy emotions and feel like I gotta unblock my ex and send him this horrible text and like, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever it is, like, I'm just like, let go, take a nap, you know?
Oh, it
So,
totally changes everything. And I mean, especially someone that, I mean, you had a traumatic brain injury. So napping for everybody is amazing. For you, it's almost a prerequisite for life. Like, you've got to take care of your brain and rest it as often as you can. And that's just something that I run a wellness expo in the city that I live in, and it's called the Healthy Brain and Body Show. And it's all about, we have an entire section dedicated to people who have suffered with traumatic brain injuries. And I've learned so much from this experience that I knew sleep was important. I now value it more than I had ever valued it before. It is such a tenet to good health. I mean, diet and exercise, that's two pieces of it, but sleep and all the rest of it.
That's when your body like cleans and heals and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, and also, you know, being epileptic now, I mean, the medications for epilepsy are very, you know what I mean? They're hardcore. So like, I'm tired. You know, so it's like, I mean, I talk to other epileptics and they're like, oh yeah, I took a nap every day. I'm like, okay, phew, I feel better, you know? So it's like, I mean, sleep deprivation is like the key to having a seizure. It's like that or too much caffeine. And believe me, I've triggered seizures many times through stress, through, oh, I'm going to drink, you know, this 20-ounce Monster, you know, and all of a sudden I'm like, you know, just like, so, but I haven't had a seizure in almost 6 years. It's very well controlled now.
Are you knocking on some wood somewhere? I hope. I will.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll do it for you. All right. So I want to know a little bit more about the 6 times in treatment, because it sort of means, it makes one think that treatment centers are not a viable option for recovery. And yet, I've interviewed a few people who work for treatment centers. I want to, again, with Sobriety Starts Here, it's all about helping people wherever they are, that are wondering about different options to get sober, wondering what's available out there. When I got sober 16 years ago, I felt completely isolated, completely alone, completely in the dark about what was available to me. I thought the only thing was AA. And I was so ashamed of my label that I refused to wear. I certainly wasn't going to go hang out in a church basement with people. So I went to health and fitness. I decided to pretend that I was just healthy. And that's why I quit drinking, everybody. And everyone's like, that's weird. And that's my story. And but finally, when I kind of came out a few years ago to the world, whoever that means, for me, it's been such a release and a relief to be able to be fully integrated, be who I am, be able to share my truth and to not be ashamed of it anymore. And so I'm trying to pay that forward with this project and basically saying there are all these different pathways to getting sober. Absolutely. And here's AA. So we had Omar on from the Share podcast. He was on talking about AA because I wanted his perspective on it. And I want other people that run treatment centers, and they come on and share the holistic approach to the treatment center that they work for. And then other people are going to talk about NA, and other people are going to talk about health and fitness, how that got them on their way. I want to know from you what you liked about treatment centers and what you didn't, and sort of why they worked, why they didn't work. I'm curious about that piece of your story.
I think that they work if you're ready.
Yeah.
If you're not ready and you're going in and you don't really want to get sober, like, it has to come from you. If you're going in because your husband's going to leave you or your parents are going to cut you off or whatever, like, it has to come from you. And
I think I think that probably applies to any modality. Whoever's not ready, like, that's why, to me, you know, I'm there to support anybody who wants to get sober, but I'm never going to be the person to say, you got to do this. This is what you have to do because you should do it. Because no one listens. When I was a smoker, everyone told me every day, you should quit smoking. I was like, go fuck yourself. I wasn't ready to listen to that message.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think if I ever really stayed clean out of a rehab for very long. You know,
from your book,
I would get months, but never like years. You know, I don't think I'd hit my bottom. Yeah. Although I thought I'd hit my bottom. I mean, the upsides of treatment centers are the structure, being with other addicts. When I'm using, I need to be locked up to stop using. That's who I am. I need to be put in a psych ward or a rehab because nothing will stop, or a detox. I cannot stop on my own once that train is going. So the downside of treatment is that you meet people that are retreads and are worse drug addicts than you. And that's how I learned how to do IV drug use, was from someone who had been sort of had been a junkie for a while, and he came over. And after I had relapsed like 3 days out of my second treatment center, and he was like, why are you snorting cocaine? You should be shooting it. It's so much better. And it's like saves money and saves drugs. And I was like, well, I'm a Jew and I like to save money. And so I was like, and at this point too, I was like, wow, I'm a drug addict and I'm going to be a drug addict forever. Like I just relapsed out of my second rehab. Like, this is going to be my life. So I'm going to I just embraced it. And, so that's part of the downside, I think, is hooking up with people that sort of have been down the addiction thing further.
Can I also ask, do you think that any part of you knew that your parents had the money to keep putting you in treatment centers, so that allowed you that almost luxury of...
Yeah, for sure. There was no bottom. And it's like, the last one I was scholarshiped in. My parents are out of money now. I mean, they've paid for so many therapists and so many, weird, like, herbology. I mean, they paid for every single type of, rebirthing. I mean, you name it, and we've done it, and treatment centers are expensive. And it's like, so, I mean, I think that there were no consequences, you know what I mean, for me. And I see that a lot when I've been to these high-end rehabs, that the really, really, really rich kids are the ones that die because there's no consequence. There's no bottom. There's endless money, and they just think that they can just like keep going back into rehab, keep going back. And they use it almost like a spa. You know what I mean? Like, they use it as like a vacation space. And it was really when sort of the well ran dry and everyone was sort of done with me, and kind of was like, they just were done fixing me, and they were done being drained emotionally and financially, that I sort of was like, oh, that I had to really kind of get it together for myself.
And that became your rock bottom.
Well, yeah, losing everything and being on medical disability and being on a chain gang and living in sober living for 2.5 years in your 40s, and having, on a single bed with a slew of different roommates, and, working for $10 an hour when you're, magna cum laude college graduate. It was just like, oh man, with nothing, starting over with nothing. Mm-hmm. But, I'm going through divorce and criminal record and all this kind of stuff. And it was like, I didn't want to grow up. I didn't want to take responsibility for myself. I wanted everyone to take care of me. That was my big thing. And
that seems to stem from, as a young girl, not wanting to grow up, not wanting to become a woman, not wanting your dad to see you as a woman. And it was interesting because there was a part in your book where you shared, so first of all, you shared that, your mother wasn't very warm with you. She wasn't very close with you, and you'd tug at her pant leg and she would almost like just kind of push you away. Like she just didn't want that touch. And I know that she was abused. You mentioned in the book, she was abused.
Very abused. Yeah.
Right. And so you understood that, but you also felt hurt as a
kid. It still feels personal. You know what I mean? Like,
Definitely. And I remember that you said at one other point, you talked about how you had everything, and, you're going in and out of these treatment centers and like, get your life together. Like, what are you doing? And you said that, there was money and there was access and there were all of these things and 2 loving parents. And I circled that sentence, those words, because I thought, did you believe that when you wrote that?
Absolutely. My mom loves me to death, and my mom is a recovering alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And she always believed in me. Believe me, there was a time where my dad was just like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, call me if you've got good news, or don't call me. And my mom never did that. My mom was the person who flew in when I, tried to kill myself, or flew in when I couldn't get out of bed when I was on speed for 6 days, and would clean my apartment. Like, my mom loved me. She just, she wasn't Miss Touchy-feely, like, that I need, that I like, because she'd gotten the shit beaten out of her by a schizophrenic mother for years. And so, she was just, you know, kind of armored and shut down. And it's like, it took me a long time. I've never doubted that my mom loved me. My mom has done, you know, it's like, yeah.
I just remember in the book when you wrote, she said that she was going to leave, you know, she was going to go and get something, and she left for 10 years. And I thought,
like, I'm going to go visit Oaxaca. And I said, you're moving there? And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm just going to go visit. And she didn't come back. And then she's like, I did come back for your high school graduation, but I'd like blocked that out. I mean, it was like, I didn't, for me, like I would go down and visit her at the summers, but she, you know, she had sort of abandoned me. You know, I felt like she'd abandoned me. And so, yeah, but no, I never have doubted that both my parents love me. They never gave up on me. And for that, I'm so grateful, because God, I mean, 20 years, like they were like, you're going to get it together. I'm like, okay, you know, good luck with that delusional belief, you know, but they're right. I did. I got it together, you know.
oh,
So
you sure as hell did get it together. Look at where you are today. How many years sober are you?
5.
5 years.
5 and change. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And I know you've been going through a lot. So wait, I don't want to jump to the end of your story. Okay, where were we? We were talking about, so you were doing meth, you were injecting cocaine. Keep going from that point. You were about 25, I think, in your story. So keep going.
I think I went, you know, like I had like 6 years, like without program, and you know, you can do it, but my life was really small and I wasn't changing, and I was very depressed. And then I started having the seizures, and then I, you know, got my heart broken, and I tried to kill myself because I'm really dramatic, and that's what I do. You know, it's like, oh, you hurt me, watch this, you know. And then I came back to LA, and I was like, well, I've been clean for 6 or 7 years. I can smoke pot, I can drink, you know, I can do coke. It's not meth. It'll be fine. And it was so not fine. And I was in treatment within months again. Yeah. You know. And then I relapsed and started shooting cocaine. I mean, it was just spiraling down more and more. And the more you relapse, the less you believe that you can get it. That's the problem. I think relapse itself is almost addictive, you know, and I started to really lose faith that I could ever get sober.
That's interesting, because relapse worked in the exact opposite way for me. I relapsed 4 days into my, you know, when I decided I was going to quit drinking. 4 days later, I drank again, and I was like, okay, clearly this is not working. 4 years later, you know, when I thought I had it licked, I thought it was all good, I relapsed again. And it was, to me, the sort of the nail in the coffin. It was like, you decide, either you're going to keep drinking and you're going to die over on this side, or you're going to keep going where you were going and you're going to actually have a life. So make the choice. And obviously I made the choice to have a life. And so for me, it actually served me in my recovery, but I realized that that's not the case for everybody, for sure.
No, I mean, I learned things from my recovery, for my relapses, for sure. You know, I think sometimes I picked up thinking it would be different. I think sometimes I picked up knowing it wouldn't be different, and I just didn't care. I was in so much pain. I hated myself, and I just didn't care. And I finally just really kept expecting people to fix it for me, you know, whether it was rehabs or therapists or psych meds or my parents or a man or whatever. And it's like, once all that got stripped away and I was left with just me on the chain gang, and it was like a huge wake up call. You know, that was not like a bottom where I was like shooting coke and having seizure after seizure and was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. But I was like, look what I've done with my life. Like, I used to think that I'd been dealt a bad hand. And I was like, you were dealt an amazing hand and you played it really badly, Amy, which is why I don't play poker, because I'm really, really bad at it. But I had this epiphany where I was like, I really need to change myself, and I need to change the way that I see the world, and I need to change my whole orientation and my whole, like, I'm a princess, everyone take care of me, and I'm helpless. Like, you know, it had worked for me for a long time, being broken. Like, I'm a drug addict, what do you expect? Like, I'm crazy, what do you expect? And it worked for me. People did stuff for me. People took care of me. People gave me money, until they didn't anymore. And then all of a sudden I was left like, you know what I mean? Like, learning to grow up in my 40s with nothing. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, I'm so glad I got arrested. It created a shift I could have never imagined and probably would never have had otherwise, you know? But that was what I needed, where I needed to really go, hey, it's your problem and you have to fix it. And these are the consequences of your actions, and you're not a victim. And I don't give a shit if you inherited addiction or, you know, oh, your mommy didn't love you enough. Like, it's your fucking problem now. And if you don't fix it, you're going to suffer. It's your life.
So how do you think you got to that place, to that moment where you were able to say that epiphany?
I'd lost everything. I mean, like I said, I was sweeping the streets. I mean, you know, I don't want to give the book away, but it was like I was sweeping human poo and syringes and, like, I'm serious, like, you know, leaves and cigarette butts, and it was me and like 40 Hispanic
condoms guys. And
yeah, it was really gross. And like, I had never been like Miss Manual Labor either. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, you know what I mean? I'd grown up.
Amy, you look so much like the type. Yeah.
Right. It was like, I'd grown up with maids and stuff. And so it was like, you know, and the universe is like, here, bitch, here's a broom. You get to sweep the streets. And I was like, oh, it was just so classic. It was so perfect. It's like, you meet your destiny on the road you go to avoid it. That's all I have to say is like, everything I avoided, I was like, I don't want to take care of myself. And I don't know. Universe was like, bitch, here, you know. I gone from, you know, being a trust fund to marrying a rich guy. He left me with nothing. And it was like, you know, so I was sweeping the streets, you know, and again, you know, it's like, all my judgment, you know, even like where I'm in the psych ward and I'm like, you know, these people are crazy. And then, like, you know, there was that guy, and I was kind of, you know, I told you, I was like, I was a dick, you know. It's like, and I let myself be honest in the book. And I was like, okay, if people are gonna think I'm an asshole, like, I was an asshole, so let's tell the truth. And if you're trying to look good in an addiction memoir, then what the fuck are you doing?
Honestly, it's my favorite part of this book is that before we started recording, I was saying that early on, you're really judgmental about a few things, and it rubbed me, and it was just like, wow, like, she's super fucking judgmental. And then a few pages in, you say something else that's really judgmental, and I'm just like, damn. And then as I kept going, it was like, thank God you are, because it makes me believe you and makes me know that this was truly your experience. You didn't hide anything. You didn't try to pretend that it was better than it was. And you really give us the raw, vulnerable truth. So again, it's why it's such a page turner. You can't put this book down. Like, you can't do it. I mean, I was literally up to like 3 a.m. when I'm like, okay, I gotta go to bed.
I know, everyone says that. They're like, fuck you. I stayed up all night reading your book. I'm at work right now hating you. I'm like, you have bad impulse control. And I'm sorry, but thank you. You know, it's like, but I was an asshole. I was using, you know, and I was mentally ill. Like, who's lovely when they're doing that? No one. Like, if I was, I would have never got sober. Like, come on. And it's like, I said those things, and it's like, I wasn't going to candy coat it. I'm not someone who candy coats things. And again, you know, there was a transformation that happened. And if you don't show who you really were, where is there to go? You know what I mean? Oh, she was so nice in the beginning when she was snorting Oxycontin. And she was so nice at the end too, when she was clean. Like, boring. You know what I mean? Like, I was a dick, you know? And it worked for me for a long time. And it was like, it was mostly fear. And it was mostly my own self-hatred and projection and all of that kind of stuff, you know? And lack of compassion, which is what I learned, you know, when I got on the chain gang. I was the only girl. And I tell this story all the time, but it's like, I get there, it's like me and 40 like Hispanic American guys in hoodies. And I'm like, oh my fucking God. Right. And I'm like a Jap, you know, and I was like, and, you know, they're like, what you here for, Weta? Huh? I'm here for a DUI. And I was like, I'm here for domestic violence with a deadly weapon. They're like, oh shit, you know. I was like the only person there for assault. I had more time than anybody else. Like, people are like, how much time you got? I'm like, 30 days. Like, would you rob a fucking bank? They're like, holy shit. Like, it was embarrassing.
And by time, you mean how much time did you have to do community service,
Yes,
not how much time you got.
more time than anybody else, that I was like, Mom, look at that guy. And it was like, bitch, you're the, you know what I mean? Like, I had I'd done a worse crime. I had more time. I'd done something violent. You know, it was really humbling. And, you know, so I was sweeping the streets and I was feeling really sorry for myself. And I just thought, wait a second. This can be the best thing that ever happened to you, or this can be the worst thing that ever happened to you. And it's your decision. Like, you know, we're at a crossroads right now, Amy. And so, you know, you can be a victim and be bitter about this, or you can go, hey, I'm here for a reason. It's partly my, you know, consequences of my actions. And maybe there's some lessons to be learned here, like humility, like a work ethic, like I'll come over and sweep your house right now. Like, I'm really good at it now after 30 days. You know, it's like compassion for other people, like all that, like dropping that thing, like that'll never happen to me. I'm above that. I'm immune. No, you're not. You know, I have compassion I'm like, under any circumstances, we're all capable of anything. I really, really believe that now, because everything I judged, I became. Everything.
And I think, isn't that true for all of us? We judge something because it's what we see in ourselves that we don't want to face.
You know, I don't even know, but I was like, ew, drug addicts. And then it was like, boom, I became a drug addict. And I was like, you know, even just all of it, everything I judged, you know, like, oh my God, he's crazy. Then I'm in like fucking like a psych ward. You know what I mean? Whatever. Like, you know, oh my God, lesbian. Like, I left my first college, Santa Cruz. I'm like, there are too many drug addicts and lesbians here. And then fast forward to me, like making out with girls and like doing, like having threesomes with, like, you know, and doing like ecstasy. And like all my best friends are gay. Like, I'm totally like gay inside. I'm straight, but I'm gay, like culturally gay. That's what everyone says. I'm like, I want to be gay. They're like, you're not gay, Amy. You like dick, you're straight. I'm like, no, but I want to be. They're like, no. You know, they're like, you can dress like a lesbian, but you are straight. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, so it's like, yeah. And then I felt like, got that crush on that lesbian, right? Who was like, nah, right? I mean,
you're straight. Get away from me. Nah, she was your friend.
You're straight, you're a newcomer, and you're fucking crazy. And I was like, so you're saying I have a chance here?
I want to talk about your comedy, because obviously anyone listening knows how hilarious you are. You talked about you started out in spoken word. When did you start doing stand-up?
I guess I started doing stand-up. I stopped in 2011 when I got arrested. So back up 5 years from that. So 2006, 2007, I guess.
Tilt your camera down a little, just because we lost half your face.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, so I guess with 2007, maybe, I was sharing in meetings, and I was crazy, and people would fall off their chairs laughing, and a couple of stand-up comics came up to me, and they're like, "You're really funny," and I was just telling the truth. I wasn't even trying to be funny, right? That's just like, I was just telling the truth. They're like, "You should really think about doing stand-up," and so I took a class, I started doing stand-up, I went on a couple sober tours, and it was great. And then, you know, I got arrested and relapsed and went through a divorce and a criminal trial and had a nervous breakdown and tried to kill myself. And so, like, you know, showing up and doing 10 minutes at the Comedy Store wasn't sort of at the top of my sort of list of things to do. Plus I was in treatment, plus then I was in sober living. There was curfews. And also, you know, for me, a lot of my stand-up was focusing on how broken I was. That's what's funny.
Yeah.
You know, it's the darkness that's funny. It's how fucked up you are that's funny. Like how you can't get a date, or how broke you are, or whatever. That's what's fucking funny. Being happy and whatever, that's not that funny. And I really wanted to recreate a new identity for myself. I wanted to shed the I'm crazy, I'm a drug addict, you know, like thing, and focus on becoming someone else. And I didn't feel that was good for me. And also I felt so raw from what I was going through. I didn't want to get on stage, and I've never been back, and I don't miss it.
So that's not a plan for you then to do that again?
No, what I am thinking about is doing college circuits and speaking to kids and using humor to get a message across, because I care more about a message, and I think humor is really a great way to get a message across. You know what I mean?
Yes. I am nodding like profusely just because I want the camera to stay on you, because it jumps back and forth whenever I say anything.
I'm really immature, so I think that I'm really immature, so I think that kids would really, and I'm really raw, so I think they'd really get it and they'd really hear me. And so I think that would be something, a way to use performance, because I still like making people laugh, and I do it at meetings and whatever, and it's like,
and you do it naturally. It absolutely is part of who you are just as a human.
But
and
it's also a tool. I think we have to laugh, because otherwise the shame is like so unbearable. You know, if we don't laugh, you're just gonna cry yourself to your fucking grave. Like, you've got to laugh at stuff. You know, you can't take yourself so seriously. Like, you know, my father was a comedy writer. I grew up, being funny was number one. That was the number one thing, you know? And so,
did your dad ever come and see you do stand-up?
He saw tapes, and he thought it was funny. And, yeah, you know, but I just, you know, you've got to really have a drive. That's like, you know, that's a young people's game too. You got to be like, you know, I'm in bed at 9:30. I'm like, I'm over it, man. I'm sober. I'm old. I like, you know, I'm in bed with Colonel Puff Puff, my kitty. I'm like, I'm over it. I don't want to be 12:30, like, what, you know, at a club, like waiting for a spot. I just don't, you know what I mean? You know, and that's the other thing. It's like, I was never a big party girl. I was like a lone user, especially when you're doing IV drug use. Like, it's like, you can't like really, you know, you're not like, hey, come on over, I'm having a dinner party, bring syringes, you know what I mean? Like, you don't, it's really a loner sort of thing. And so is Crystal, when you're like up for 6 days, and you're like, you know, did you see the people in the trees? You know, people are like, oh my God, like, get me out of here. You know, do you want a collage? You know, I'm refinishing this piece of furniture that I got dumpster diving. You know, they're like, wow.
Would these projects ever turn out beautifully, or was it all just really
incredibly? Yeah. Well, when you're tweaking, you're really hyperactive to detail.
Wow.
So, and I was writing when I was a tweaker too. I haven't read that stuff. That creeps me out. I have a binder, and it's like, I can't even open it. It just creeps me out so much.
Do you think one day you will? Do you think you might open that at some point?
Yeah, I'd like to see like what it was, but it was like very much me sort of being in love with the drug, you know, and then also sort of bottoming out and like, you know, laying in the bathtub all night crying, smoking speed, listening to Nirvana on loop, and wanting to kill myself. It was like that. I mean, you know, there's a joke, there's no old tweakers. You know why? Because they're fucking dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I like to use humor in the book. I think that brought it some levity, because there's some really dark points. You know what I mean? There's some really dark moments in that book. And so I like to use humor, and yeah, I'd like to use it in sort of getting a message across. I'm not really interested in just making people laugh anymore.
Well, it's amazing. You've said it here. I don't know if it's first, but you've said it here, and I encourage you to speak to kids. They need your message. It is absolutely life-changing and life-saving. So definitely put that on your list of what you're going to do, because you'll be phenomenal at it. Every school across the country and across the globe is going to want to hire you to come to the school. So I really encourage you to
swearing under control.
What's that? Say it again.
I can keep my swearing under control. I mean, they might just be like, you know, I'm like, you want someone who's really on PC? You know, it's like, okay.
And I think you'd have to do it that way. I think you'd have to say, I
can only be me. I can really only be me.
Totally. It's what we love. It's what we want. We want real. We don't give a shit about F-bombs. Like, we want real. However you deliver that is what people want. We feel that when you hear the truth, you feel it. And
I agree. People, that seems to be what people have responded to. They're like, thank you for being so fucking honest.
Yeah, definitely.
They're like, wow, like, I feel less alone. Like, I feel less ashamed. I don't feel like I'm a bad person. I'm like, yeah, because I'm much worse, you know, no, whatever. But it's like, you know, they feel, because I knew the stuff I didn't want to write, especially the sex addiction stuff, which was really mortifying. I was like, that's the stuff I need to write down because someone's going to identify with that. And that was also the bottom. And that's the truth. And I was like, fuck looking good, Amy. You know what I mean? And, you know, we've all been in a situation where we did something sexually that we didn't want to do because we didn't want to make that person angry, or we wanted validation, or we were lonely, or
we were drunk, or we were high.
Whatever, you know what I mean? So it's like they might not have taken it to the extent that I did, but the feelings that drove that, I think people can identify with.
It's all the same. I talk about this a lot in my work. We are all the same. I don't care. And that's why memoirs are so powerful, because we can all see ourselves at least somewhere in somebody else's story. I love it. You've talked a lot about how much you hated yourself and the self-loathing and the way you felt about yourself negatively. How do you feel about yourself today? And how do you think you can help others to learn to love themselves if they're struggling with self-loathing?
I just cut off the top of my head again because I stood straight.
What's that? Oh, you have to change your camera again? Okay, once you change your camera again, then...
I was like, oh, I just cut the top of my head up. Okay. Okay, well, I'm sorry. Like, how do I feel about myself now?
Well, yeah. How do you feel about yourself now? And how did you learn to love yourself? I mean, you went from being somebody who absolutely hated yourself, and you talk about that a lot in the book, and even this conversation with me. Can you share with people that are watching right now?
Let's do a video interview. And I was like, can we not? You know what I mean? It's like, partly I was like, this is it. You're given this. This is who you are, and you better make peace with it. Number one. Number two, I realized that I don't see clearly, not just alcoholism, but because I was anorexic and I had body dysmorphic disorder, I don't see myself clearly. So I have to trust other people to be my mirror, for not just for my, you know, the way I look, for behaviors too. Like, hey, was that obnoxious? Like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a good judge, you know? I also became someone I liked. Through the chain gang and doing step work and working, and you know, I transformed into someone that I respected and liked, that people trusted me with their fucking baby, like, which is nuts, you know what I mean? Or their money, or their dogs, or I'm reliable. If I say I'm gonna be there somewhere, I'm gonna be there. I'm a good friend, I'm a great partner. Like, you know, I became the person I wanted to be. And I was like, you know, I mean, writing the book, I thought would fill that hole. I'm like, I'm going to write this book and it's going to fill that hole. And it didn't. You know, what has filled the hole is the messages from people who are like, your fucking book changed my fucking life. Yeah. Like, yeah. I'm like, and I just start crying. And it's like, because taking 20 years of just being a sinkhole of just like fucking up and taking from people and being destructive, and someone going, you gave me hope and I'm going to go into treatment for the first time. Like, oh my God, like to be a part of that is like so mind blowing, you know? Mm-hmm. And so that's what fills the hole.
Mm-hmm. That's such a testament for when we hear people say, we don't just go through things for ourselves. We go through those things for other people.
I mean, I'd heard that. They were like, you won't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. And you'll see how it can help other people. And I was like, oh, fuck you. You know what I mean? Or like when people would be like, my life's beyond my wildest dreams. I just like wanted to punch them in the throat. And it's like, that's happening. My life is fucking amazing. And it's like, I'm that person I hated, you know? I'm that person who's like, I'm doing yoga. Well, I'm going to breath work tonight. Well, it's like, I'm exactly that person who I have always hated. You know what I mean? And made fun of. Mm-hmm. Again, even in sobriety. You know what I mean? Even in sobriety.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well,
I'm like, ew, sex addicts. Universe is like, oh, really, bitch? Okay, here you go. You know, mm-hmm. It's like, careful what you judge, man. It's mm-hmm. like, and also I'm resilient. It's like, I refuse to, you know, I'm not proud of a bunch of stuff I did, but like, I think that I let it change me. I can't go back and change the past. Fuck shame. I forgave myself. I did the best I could at the time. I didn't have great tools. I was who I was. Change is hard. And if you can change, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Not just getting sober, but just personal change in general is really, really difficult. Mm-hmm. And I'm a resilient fucker. Like I cry a lot, but like, holy shit, I'm resilient. And
isn't
so
that part of it? Isn't it maybe that you didn't cry enough while you were using? You know, isn't it that we need those?
I cried while I was using.
But I feel like for so many
I have
people,
eyelash extensions now, and I don't like to cry because they come off.
it's a good incentive to not. But I think it's interesting.
I cry all the time. I'm still a crybaby.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to release those feelings and emotions. We've got to get them out somehow. I mean, if not, we're cutting or we're using or we're eating.
Cutting. Yeah, starting cutting in your 40s. Yay! How about that one, right? Slow to the party. I mean, that was a whole new thing I picked up, and I was like, oh, this works. And I was like, oh God, you know, and it was like, it's sad, you know, it's like a lot of that stuff. I look back, you were asking me what the process of writing the book was like. It's like putting myself back in that active addiction mind space was really hard and really painful. And reliving some of that stuff was very difficult. And also, I didn't recognize that person. Like I knew it was me, but I was like, I wanted to go back and go, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, wake the fuck up. Like, why are you doing that, Amy? Like, stop. Like, you know, I was just like, I mean, even I was like, what a dick. You know, I know I was a dick, you know, it's like, and so I recognize that person and I don't, you know what I mean? And I'm just so happy to not be that person anymore.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Sometimes I'll say, and this sounds super judgmental, but it's like, I wouldn't be friends with my old me. Like, it's just not somebody that I would relate to anymore. And it's not because I didn't love her and feel sad that she was going through what she was going through. But, you know, I get to pick and choose who I want to spend my time and energy with on the planet. And she just wouldn't be somebody that I would want to spend a lot of time with.
And incredibly, I have a lot of the same friends. Some of my same friends have stood by me, and they'll even say, you're an incredible asshole, but everyone loves you, and it's really irritating, and we don't know why. And I'm like, I don't know what to say to that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry. Like,
yeah, that's awesome.
I have nice hair. I don't, you know, it's like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
you do have nice hair. You talked about your hair in the book, and you do have nice hair. I was excited.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I finally washed it. You know, that's the fucking joy of working from home. It's like, is it house arrest or are you working from home? Like, I'm afraid to leave the house. I don't leave the house. I hadn't washed my hair in like 2 weeks. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I don't have the energy to like do the Jufro, like blow out the Jufro. I just don't have the energy, you know?
But
like,
you did it. I love it because I work from home too. And I, you know, I can go a few days without washing mine too, but doing all these yeah. What's that? Say it again.
You got to get out of the house. It makes you crazy.
Makes you crazy. Yeah. You got to do it. You got to make plans. You got to get out once a day, get some air, be in front of real people, not just computer screens.
Right. I'm like, my only communication is podcasts right now. You know, I'm serious. That's been like my only talking with people. I'm like, I got to get to a meeting. I got to get out and like talk with people. You were asking me earlier why I wrote the book. Yeah. And I wrote the book because it wasn't cathartic. It was really painful. And, you know, my dad's like, once you write the book, you know, when you close the door, you know, the door on it, it's fiction and you're no longer that person. I was like, okay. But I wrote the book to help other people. I wrote the book because I thought if I can get fucking sober, anybody can get sober. And I dedicated it to people who think it's too late because I know that feeling where you're like, fuck, it's too late. I can't get it. I've relapsed too many times. I'm too old. I've lost too much or whatever. And I just thought, maybe this can help someone. And I thought it could help non-addicts understand our thinking and maybe have a little more compassion. And I guess it's done that because I've gotten messages from people and they're like, wow, thank you. Like, I understand addiction so much better now. And I have so much more compassion for my brother, my uncle. And I'm like, whoa, like I did it, you know, it's like, but that was about letting people really into the craziness and the darkness and the compulsion and all, you know, the way we think and the biology and all of it, which isn't pretty.
Can't it still be cathartic and painful at the same time?
It was cathartic because I finished something I started, and I'm proud of that. And
on time, early.
Yeah, and people are loving the book, and that means a lot to me. And it's something I've wanted to accomplish for a long time, and so I'm proud of myself. And but I am getting some pushback for some of the terms, not just for me going, oh, she's fat or whatever, but it's like junkie. Like there's this new, I'm sure you know, there's this new sort of wave of like, let's change the vernacular. So
like I even said during our conversation, I don't know if we were recording yet or not, it's all blending together, but I said something about being an addict, and it's like, oh wait, I call myself sober now. I don't call myself an alcoholic really. And I'm sort of getting stuck up on the language around what I am, but I'm somebody who can't drink one glass of wine. That I know for sure.
Yeah, I just, my fair girl with substance abuse disorder wouldn't have really worked as a title, number one. Number two, I'm not PC. I'm not trying to start a recovery movement. I'm not an advocate. You know what I mean? I'm just me, and I wrote a book, and it's cool that it's helping people, and that's it. And it's like, to be honest with you, I think that there are parts of us that I was kind of proud to be a junkie at one point. Like I had track marks, and I was like, I'm a badass. Like there is a darkness that we are attracted to, that we glamorize. And so I think to whitewash that is taking away a part of what the problem really is, which is that we glamorize that. We glamorize it in music. We glamorize it in movies. And I thought it was glamorous. I thought I was a badass. You know what I mean? And it was like, there was a part of me where it's like, I was a fucking junkie, and it freaked people out, and that gave me power. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about that. I had Erin Shaw Street on, and she's, started an initiative. I love her. And so she's all about, so she's all about telling better stories in the media. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do you feel about the way addiction is glamorized or drinking culture or drug culture in Hollywood where you live?
I mean, I'm not really in touch with that stuff. It's just like, I think that, I recognize that because I'm an addict, not everyone's an addict. Not everyone who does cocaine becomes addicted to cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? People go through whatever, but it's like, I really, the glamorization, like it was the darkest thing that ever happened to me. And and people are dying. So to glamorize it, I think is not okay, but it's also part of what we do for ourselves. You know what I mean? Telling our own war stories. Like we're guilty of it too. I mean, even in the rooms, there's a weird competition of who had the lower bottom. You know what I mean? Like there's that. It's like, that's in it. We are participants in that as well. It's not just Hollywood or whatever. And it's like, I think addiction is so multifaceted that way. I remember one time when I went up to Oregon, and it was really hot, and I was wearing a short sleeve shirt, and I had track marks on my arms, and my dad said, put on a fucking sweatshirt. And I said, it's 80 degrees. And he goes, I don't give a shit. I don't want to see that. And he said, I want to see you as my daughter. I don't want to see you as an addict. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
But I also recall going through, TSA, and having track marks all over me and feeling really, really ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, in terms of the language, it's like, I think that what's going to change is people coming out in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it becoming loud. I'm all about recovering out loud. I'm not for anonymity. I'm like, I was a fucking drug addict. I was a junkie. Like, I own that. I was a junkie, man, and it's like, and now I'm not. And it's like, there's Burroughs, and he wrote a book called Junkie. It's like, why are we, I don't think cleaning up the language is like, oh, like mental illness versus crazy. Like people still are freaked out by it. You know what I mean? Or like when I spoke, I read the part about where I took care of the quadriplegic guy, and I read it in San Francisco, and I guess you're not supposed to use the word handicapped. I don't know. I can't keep up. Right. And it's like the whole room like lost their fucking mind. They were like, ah! And it was like, I'm sorry. Have you washed and bathed and fed a fucking paralyzed man for 7 months? No? then shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? It's not about the words, it's what's behind the words. You know, and as a comic, as a former comic and as a writer, I don't like to have my hands tied with what words I can use. I just don't. That doesn't feel like freedom of speech to me.
No, I hear you. You talk a lot about AA in the book, and you give it a bit of a hard time. I know you go to AA. And I'm curious why AA and not NA. But anyway, tell us about your thoughts about AA and the language that is used there, and how do you feel about it?
I didn't go to NA because I just didn't connect to it. I went to a couple meetings and it just didn't feel like my people, and I didn't really connect. And I'd heard that there was more solid sobriety in AA. That's what I heard, you know, and I hadn't, you know, been to prison yet, you know, and I've still not been to prison, but I hadn't been to jail yet. And it just felt like a harder core crowd and I felt uncomfortable. And I felt like I didn't fit in, you know, which is, I'm sure. And in LA, everyone's cross addicted. Everyone talks about drugs. Like, you know, every drug addict is in AA. It's like, you know, like, or at least all the famous ones. And so, what I give AA a hard time about in the book is the fellowship. Not the program. The program is fucking awesome, except for the creepy Christian lingo, which I'm like, you know, like the creator, Lord, Father, that stuff totally freaks me out. Like, I will not say the Lord's Prayer. Like, I'll just stand there and just hold hands. Like, I don't like that shit. Like, I do pray and all that kind of stuff, but I don't like that Christian language. It creeps me out. And, yeah, I mean, I think that whenever you get a group of sick people together that are trying to recover and they're putting down drugs and alcohol, of course they're going to pick up sex and power and money and gambling and food and, like, you know, so like the sexual predatory behavior that happens in the rooms is common to wherever there's a power hierarchy. Like, look at Hollywood now. Like, that's coming out. It's in the military. It's on college campuses. It's everywhere. So to think that it's not going to be where there's a bunch of, you know, alcoholics getting better with, you know, crazy impulses, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. You know, we're looking for the next dopamine fix, and sex is a great one. You know, and that was mine. I picked it up. I was like, okay, nicotine and sex, here we go. You know, I don't like the righteousness. I don't like the righteousness. I don't like the fundamentalism. I don't like that this is the only way to do it. And if you're not doing it this way, you're not doing it right. You're dry. You're not sober. Bullshit. You know, if you get fucking sober doing yoga, awesome. If you live an examined life, fucking awesome. Smart recovery, refuge recovery, whatever, harm reduction, like whatever works for you. You know, I don't like that rigidity. I don't like that, oh, if, you know, no one's ever failed. And if you know, relapse, it's you did something wrong. The program's never wrong. It's like, I don't think that AA is the best or only way to get sober for everyone.
Right.
I think people come in with a lot of different stuff. And so, you know, I think that, you know, to do a one size fits all thing is just, it doesn't work. So saying that, what I do like about it, and I don't like the time bully shit, because a lot of people are afraid to come back because they're afraid to be judged. They're like, I can't relapse because I'd be too ashamed to come back. It's like, who gives a shit what people think? Like, you want to be queen of the drunks? Like, who cares?
I know. The whole time thing, it's a big conversation that I seem to have it a lot in a lot of different communities that I'm a part of. And this whole time thing is what really holds a lot of people back. And in fact, when I say I got sober 16 years ago, I don't say I got sober 12 years ago because I relapsed 4 years in. Like, I say I got sober 16 years ago. I've had a few, you know, stumbles along the way, but it's been still my journey forward. I don't like that whole idea of having to go all the way back to the beginning. It doesn't make any sense to me. I had
to reset my time. Like, when I tried to kill myself with pills, I wasn't trying to get high. I was just trying to die. And I ended up really, really loaded. And they, you know, my sponsor at the time made me reset my time, and I reset my time. But it's like, you know, I think that I've seen people who have a lot of time be driven out of the program because the pressure of being on a pedestal is too much, or people who have time and then relapse and they don't feel like they can come back, or people who have time and are struggling don't feel like they can be, honest, because everyone's, looking up to them because they have 19 years or whatever. And it's like, what about the whole reprieve, one day at a time kind of thing? So it's like, there are time bullies, and I just think, it needs to be an inclusive program. And if you're fucking alive, come back. Like, I was a retread for so long. I was a secretary of a meeting, and then I was a newcomer the next day, and it was gnarly. You know what I mean? But so it's like,
would you recommend for people that are just now literally have just Googled, how do I get sober? Where do I go? And this website might have popped up. They've clicked it. They're watching your video right now for the first time, considering even maybe going to an AA meeting. Would you recommend that people try a whole bunch of different meetings? Like, because I didn't do AA, so I went to 5 different meetings. I went
really?
to one. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I went to a couple, I tried a few different, and for me, it just didn't resonate. It wasn't, I just didn't want to do what was being asked of me to do at the time. And so it wasn't the way that I recovered, but I respect it wholeheartily, because I know so many people who it has saved their lives. So yeah, so I'm just wondering if, go ahead, you go.
I'm in AA. I have a sponsor. I have sponsees. AA completely changed my life. I hate when people say that. Again, I'm the person I've always hated. I've become that person. It's terrific. Soon I'll be gluten-free. I used to smoke meth, and now I'm gluten-free. I'm going to become that fucking person soon. I really needed the moral compass. I needed, taking out the spiritual component, I think it's cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
For free.
Yeah.
It's acting yourself into right thinking. And if you do it over and over and over again, you become that fucking new person. That's it. You know what I mean? So it's like, the contrary action, you create these new neural pathways. It's like action is character. And I say this before, it's like, I had a sponsor who was like, I was like, well, that's not my truth. And I don't like that person. I don't feel like doing that. My sponsor was like, you don't have to be a good person. You just have to act like one. No one knows the fucking difference. And I was like, oh, but it was like, it's true. No one judges you on your intentions. You're judged on your actions. That's what matters. And it's like, I think for addicts, we're always waiting for the feeling to change. And it's like, you take the action and then the feeling changes. And it took so fucking long for me to get that. And there's still days where I'm like, I'm depressed, and everyone's like, get out of the house. I'm like, fuck you, and it's like, I can't, I just sink into it. But so for me, and I loved the fellowship. I mean, I've met some royal assholes in AA. And I've met some amazing, amazing people, and I think that, if you take AA and you boil it down, it's really the bits from all the top religions and psychologies. He didn't create some new thing, It's like Jungian psychology, it's meditation, it's prayer, it's confession, it's fellowship, it's, it's nothing new. So, and
you're right. And it's for free. And it's in every city and every town across
the meetings that are right for you. Because there's some meetings that are really kind of like, like handbag purse meetings, show off, like people like dress up. And then there's other meetings like that are really safe and like where you can laugh and it's dark and like you can say whatever you're thinking and like, so it's like, I would say, I would say check out a bunch of different meetings. I mean, I haven't read Russell Brand's book, but I have a friend who is a year clean, never gone to an AA meeting. And he's open after reading Russell Brand's book. And he was never open before. So I think that his book is good for people to breaks down the program in a really simplistic way. And I haven't read the book, but for people, but it's like, find what works for you. That's it.
Well, and what Russell also does is he just explains, he just takes the shame out of it because he points out that we all have something we're doing. So, fuck off if you think that that you're holier than thou because you've never used crystal meth or drank alcohol. Are you on social media every day? Are you looking at pornography every day? Are you? Yeah.
Of course, so it's like, I mean, I do breath work. God, I'm such a hippie. Oh my God, right? How LA am I? I'm doing yoga and breath work, and I'm gonna go like cafe gratitude. Oh my God, you know, the breathwork group that I do, God, so easy. I know, it's like, I can't even
You can't even say it. You cannot even.
No, but I talk about it in the book because it's really life-changing. Because for someone who's in their head so much, I got to get out of my head. I got to get into my body. And I'm sure you can like get, you know what I mean? It's like, yoga gets me in my body. Breathwork gets me in my body. I got to access my body because I hold a lot of trauma and feelings there. And a lot of times this is not the safest, greatest place. So in the breathwork for recovery that I go to, the guy is clean off crystal for years and he does not go to AA. He doesn't believe in AA. And when we go around the room, we identify as a person in recovery. And you can be a person in recovery from anything.
Oh, interesting. So you don't say, you know, hi, I'm Amy and I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic.
No, he doesn't believe in that label. He thinks it's bad. He's very much about, you know, and he's like, fuck anonymity. But he's like, you know, if you're a person in recovery. But it's like, of course, I'm so trained from AA meetings, they'll be like, hi, I'm John. I'm a person in recovery. I'm like, hi, John. And I'm like the only person saying, you know, I'm like, right. I'm just like totally robotic now. Hi, John. Yay. I'm like, oh God.
Muscle memory. Yeah, that's hilarious.
So I would just say, check it out. I would say check out a bunch of different meetings.
Yeah, well, I'll say to people, even though I was not somebody who used AA, but for somebody that's just getting started, again, like you say, it's a really low barrier to entry. You just got to find any church in your neighborhood, and there probably is a meeting there tonight. And it's like, you can't, if you go to one vegan or, you know, non-vegan or whatever cafe that you go to and you don't like the food there, it's not like you can never go to another vegan or non-vegan or cafe again. Like, try another one.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, for me, like loneliness was a huge part of my addiction and feeling broken and feeling like something was wrong with me. And, you know, hearing other people say the things that I'm thinking and the same crazy thoughts, you're like, oh, my tribe, you know what I mean? Like you feel less alone and it's like, and they'll really show up for you. And it's like, you know, and they have the same crazy and they're not going to fucking judge you because they've been there.
Absolutely.
So it's like, but I'm not, you know, what I propose whatever works for someone, you know, find what works for you. We're all trying to get to the same destination. So like, you know, whatever works for you, like right on.
Right? Like just keep going till you find it.
Yeah.
I have loved this conversation with you, Amy.
Oh, you're done. I'm so bummed. Oh.
You want to keep going? You can keep going all night if you want to. I have loved chatting with you, though. I find you absolutely fascinating. Your writing is exceptional. Your work is amazing. I already followed you on The Fix, and I loved your work there. So to know that you have now achieved a dream of your life for over 20 years in your amazing, groundbreaking book, I absolutely applaud you. I find you, like I say, just truly fascinating and somebody who I am so inspired by. You've been through so much. And the fact that you are now going to take your message and help to change other people, you already have the messages that you get daily, I'm sure, and the messages that you'll never get. People that are just too afraid to reach out to you.
I would never write to someone. I've never written to someone and been like, your book changed my life, like ever. I would never think that they would write back, but I write back to everyone. I write back to everyone.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if I'll always be able to do that. I say that on every podcast and I'm like, why am I saying that? Like, I'm never going to be away from the computer, but it's like, I think it's so important because people feel connected because it's so raw. And it's like, I want to thank them and I want to make them feel heard. You know, I don't know. I'm so moved that people write to me. It's like to be able to have taken my experience, which was so horrific for so long. And I was such, like I said, just a tornado of destruction and pain. And to turn that into something that's a tool to help people is like, fuck, you know? I'm like, wow, I actually turned it around and I'm doing something good. And it's like, it feels really good. And that's another part of like the self-loathing. It's like, I'm doing something pretty fucking cool.
Well, you even said twice, I believe, in this conversation, I feel proud of myself. And that is everything. I remember that feeling, like it makes me emotional because I remember I hated myself for so long. And I remember the feeling of saying, I'm proud of myself. I'm doing something. I went back to business school when I got my DUI, and that was my rock bottom. It was a DUI. It doesn't seem like a big deal when after you read your book, but for me, that was my rock bottom. And so when I went back to school and I graduated,
your rock bottom is when you stop digging. Like, God bless you. Like, I wish my rock bottom had been like when I had that first seizure and was like, okay, got it. You know what I mean? Instead of 20 more years of shit.
I know, but hey, you wouldn't have this book without 20 years of stories to tell us. So, I mean, honestly, I wish you didn't have to go through all of that pain, but knowing that what you went through is going to save other people going through it.
I would do it all again to give the gift that I'm giving people.
I feel the same way. I think that I haven't talked to anybody yet that has said that they regret everything or that they really wish that they could erase everything. I think once you live your life out loud and you get out of that shame feeling, that is when we kind of say, you know what, it's been worth it. It's been worth it because I'm able to pay it forward and I'm able to help other people to not have to go through it, or just as profoundly to feel that they are not alone if they are going through something.
Like, give them some hope and be like, fuck, okay, I don't feel so fucked up now. Yeah. And even my parents are just like, wow, like, we get now why you had to go through that so you could write this book so you could help people. My dad's like, there's no higher calling than helping people. And he's like, I'm so fucking proud of you. I couldn't be prouder of you. And it's like, that's just not something I would, I heard for a long time,
Truly, that must be, honestly, I can't even imagine how that must feel.
I wanted to get my shit together before my parents died. You know what I mean? I was like, please, God, let me get my fucking shit together before my parents died. They tried so hard and I just couldn't get it together. And it was like, they were like this, my mother was like, she'll get it together because I got it together. And my dad was like, this can't even be real. It's so fucking trite. I wouldn't even write something this trite. It's so classically, just like, it can't even be true. It's so ridiculous. He's like, and she's my kid and there's ego. She's got to get it together. I don't know why that's the impression of my dad.
And is this in your audiobook? Is that the way you?
I don't even remember. I think I make my dad sound like something out of like fucking Goodfellas or something.
All right, Amy. For everybody that wants to get in touch with you, to write you their letters, where can people get in touch with you?
I've got a website, amydresner.com. We can see pictures of the Chain Gang and me in sober living, my dirty feed and all this kind of shit, and like pictures of like weird shit I found. There's all my podcasts. There's links to my writing. There's all the wonderful blurbs I've gotten from amazing, amazing writers and performers. So happy. So amydresner.com, and you can message me. I'm on Twitter, Amy Dresner. I'm on Instagram, Amy Dresner. Too many pictures of the cat. I know. I got it. I heard it. I'm going to take more selfies.
Twitter, Facebook, yeah.
Facebook, Amy Dresner Official. If you, and if you write to me and say, hey, I saw you, on, Sobriety starts
here.
Hey, a lot of drugs. Come on, a lot of drugs.
You're doing really well for
pretty good. A little bit of, everything's a surprise again. It's terrific. No memory. If you say, oh my God, I saw you on that podcast, I'll accept your friend request. You know what I mean? It's like, cause I have like shitty boundaries. And so I'm like, come in, everyone.
Well, you have to cap that at 5,000. So
I know I'm probably will like cut away all like the old comics that I don't talk to anymore. And like, it's all like recovery
and it's people. Just recovery people. It's
I know, right? Great.
Just your tribe. I love it though. You're amazing. Thank you so much for this time. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it, and I can't wait to stay connected with you. Just keep doing your amazing work. You're incredible.
Thank you so much for having me.
Access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.